All right, welcome back to Building a Space Elevator again, episode 20 of the time lapse. So let's get started. All right, so before we jumped into episode 20, we had to cover a little bit of time lapse for episode 19. As you can tell, my voice is still a little off, but I'm trying our best here. All right, so the main focus on 19 was actually building out the multi-tool, but instead of putting the welder and grinder, we put some drills on so we can build this ship to go into space to look for some resources. Why build this ship for the drills? Because it had hydrogen, so it was easier to get to space that way. And if you're efficient enough with hydrogen, if the two large hydrogen tanks for a small grid, you can make it to space with 70% remaining. And that's how I was able to get up there and, maintain myself in space for quite some time, but I did leave with 30% left and nearly didn't make it back. I think I made it back with about 15 to 12% by the iron or the ice lake actually, and I recharged there and come back from there. So yeah, it was a little tricky getting back, but of course most of it was dampeners and just the upward thrust that was wasting the hydrogen. But unfortunately, we didn't find too much out in space either. So that's a little bit unfortunate about that whole time spent out there. So we found space. I kind of GPSed it right there. Space cobalt, space silicon, and space nickel. That's as far as I got with the 3 asteroids that I was able to look at and had to come back. What I was really looking for was platinum and uranium, but that was a stretch, to be honest. But we got a new ship that acts like a miner and or a drilling ship, so that kind of works out. And then we got started with the hovercraft or hover engine piece of the monorail or space elevator. And the focus on episode 20 was developing the rest of it, but it's still connected to grid because we didn't finish all the hover engines as you see here. So the hover engines going outwards. This one's still missing a ton of gravity components. And there's a few other ones that are missing as well. I mean, for the most part, we're almost there. But down here, we're missing a whole bunch. So we're waiting for that to be kind of generated. And that required a lot of gold and silver, cobalt, things like that we didn't have too much of. So here and there, I was mining the gold. And we dig down over here where the original gold area is. And we were able to use our drilling ship to gather this gold right here. And there's a little more to gather, but we'll continue to do that too. In terms of the iron that's here, we did the sweeping motion right here and right over here, but it looks like there's still a lot more to gather actually. So that's pretty interesting. I used the ship here, the original mining ship, to get some of this. That's why you see this little rectangular piece right here. But the sweeping one's going to gather more from this side. And this is keeping our iron production and stone production or refining as much as possible. And I created this little connector here, which you didn't really see in time lapse, but that's the point of these context videos. You see a little connector here, so we can connect this ship here, so I can easily go down, grab what I can, and come back up. Small things like that to kind of help things move a little faster. All right, so I did have to enlist the help of the original large grid welder ship to weld up some of these things, because this welder was only able to weld up the front block but not behind it, but the other welder was able to do behind it because it's the larger grid version. But that's why we brought that here. But that was at the ice lake at one point in time, so it looks like we brought most of our ships back here. Unfortunately, I trapped my rail glider here, or rail rider here, so I can't use that anymore. But I will be using this relatively soon. So this is our kind of monorail system, and it's got 2 hydrogen tanks, a large cargo container just in case, 2 large thrusters, one forward, one backwards, and this piece here is the rail glider or part of it, which is going to be a lot of hovercraft or hover engines. Mostly small ones, except for the top one's going to be large ones. This may be an issue. It may not even work properly, to be honest. And if that's the case, we're going to find a way to connect this part of the grid to this part of the grid, because when I did the rail rider, kind of similar, where we dropped one end over here down to here with a upwards hover engine, it kind of tilted everything to the left. But I didn't get as far as connecting one here to bounce off of this one. So I'm hoping that this piece here is going to prevent our issue that we experienced with the Rail Rider. Hopefully. If not, then we got to find a way to square out this whole rail system and kind of create a whole square-like thing. I know that works for sure, because that's what we did in our testing at one point in time before we started this. But this little gap here may or may not cause a big issue. And that gap is created for these little piping systems right over here. So this could be an issue. I mean, this whole thing was a bit of a risk to do, but we'll see what happens relatively soon once we have all the hover engines welded up and released as a monorail. So other than that, we put in the station itself, so a bit of a ramp system connected to the original base. And it's not necessarily connected to our monorail system space elevator. So you see there, that's kind of the connection there. Separate grid, in a way. May or may not cause clang. Actually, I should remove this before I release the hover engines and everything like that. But this monorail system in here, it's very plain for now. And it's got the hangar doors to try to keep it closed and shut and make it airtight. But we have a problem because we aren't airtight. As much as that looks like it's airtight, it's not. It's not pressurized whatsoever. So we have a problem, a leak somewhere. I got to figure out where that is eventually. But I built most of these windows on the outer exterior piece. That may be the problem, but I did cover it up with like panels and stuff like that right here. A light panel, regular panels, or whatever, light armor panels. Pretty much covered as much as I could so that that's not the issue. I don't think the hangar door is the issue, but it could be. This window is built from the inside, so that's why I can't build a block in front of it. So I was hoping that would all kind of make it airtight, but it's not. So I don't know where the leak is, but I'll put that mod on. That works with Build Vision to kind of show you where the leak is. But I'm pretty sure it could be the hangar doors. I don't think it's the conveyor junctions up here. Or it could just be this section right here, where the glass window's on the outer wall and this one's on the inner wall. So this corner might need to be sealed in order for it to be airtight. So unfortunately, maybe I would have to build all these windows in the inside to make it airtight, which is fine because not much we want to do here. I kind of did want to put seating here, so if I had passengers and things like that, at least we have that. But if we can't do it that way, we can't do it that way. We could always put seats more in a line like this, if anything. So we could just give that a shot instead. Even I built in the exterior, I put panels out here too, just to cover it up. But I really think it's this potentially corner right here that's the issue. Maybe. I don't know. And of course, speaking about air pressure and having air vents, there's 2 oxygen tanks in here as well, pretty filled up. So we have some oxygen when we're in space. So that's pretty much this space elevator. We wanted to keep it simple. And especially I want to keep it as simple as possible in case this actually becomes a problem. Like, it might even bounce a little bit initially. So honestly, I should empty out these hydrogen tanks just in case. Because if it does create some kind of clang and the hydrogen tanks were full, we're going to see a nice big old explosion. So we might want to avoid that. So we're going to have to find a way to drain that eventually. Alright, so that's the focus on today's episode and the previous episode. Is kind of the base, the multi-tool drilling ship. I just called it the Evil Miner Mark 1 for now. This thing is still not a ship, it's still a station. I have to convert it to a ship relatively soon once I have everything welded up. So that's going to wait a little bit longer, as I'm still struggling to get silver, gold, and cobalt quick enough. The mining here has been pretty decent. It's upkeeping what we have so far, but not much changed here, to be honest. So that's it for the main base. Let's go on to the binding base. And of course, by mining base, I mean now secondary iron mining base right over here. So what we did differently is that we reduced one piston from the 3 pistons that were here into 2 instead of 3. So we can go a little bit deeper, slightly deeper than what we had before to collect all the iron. So it looks like we collected all the iron going downwards. So we now need to start doing the sweeping or rotation right here for the rest of the iron. So it was a bit tricky to do, but it worked okay with some merge blocks, some steel plates or light armor blocks not welded up to kind of carry it up. So in order to reduce one of them, I didn't rebuild it obviously because that would just waste a lot of time. So I decided to unleash it or release it and put some merge block on this piston head, put a merge block on this conveyor junction, and then find a way for it to merge together. But we supported this whole system with some scaffolding or light armor blocks that's not welded, and we placed it on the side, spread it out for it to sit. It moved a little bit, unfortunately, and it didn't really sit really well. So I did the battery trick, which is put a lot of batteries on one side to make it lean a little bit. So I was able to make it lean just a tad enough, hit reverse on the piston, and then it got merged together, and now the piston head and the conveyor junction is connected and gathering the rest of the iron. So right now this thing's going down at negative 0.001, very slow, gathering all the stone and iron. Well, finish the iron, but it's going to gather the stone to continue with our production of iron, steel plates, and things like that. Well, it's it for the quick separate mining system or secondary mining system. We didn't do much with the ice lake. Well, actually, we didn't do much at all because we didn't need to, because we have a ton of ice and not much to do from there until we run out of the ice. All right, but let's update a little bit on the welding that's been done so far with our welding rig. We are now about 15 kilometers away from the base. So I was wrong with 14 kilometers being the build limit, obviously, because we still keep on going. It must be a lot longer than that. I don't remember what it is. We're gonna hit it eventually, but I'm not too worried about it just yet. And of course, this whole rig system will stop, so it won't fall off or break or anything like that. So with all that kind of waiting along, I'm currently a camera person down here, but kick them out. We have a ton of material. So before we got as far as we have now, we've been sitting here for a little bit for it to kind of self-weld. We had 35k of each of these items. Computers, we left at 9k. Steel plates, we had 120k at one point, and this was about 31k of motors. And yeah, we're down to 30k of steel plates once again, so that's a little alarming. Funny part of it is that I had to increase the torque a little bit on our pistons, because when I had 120,000 steel plates, the pistons were not strong enough to move the rig itself to do the inchworm technique. As much as it can move was probably 5 meters at a time. So I increased the torque and it worked out perfectly fine. And we've gotten pretty far so far. I think we got halfway point of this projector, or at least 3/4, it looks like. So this thing is probably going to stop at 16 kilometers based on the 36,000 steel plates that's left. It may or may not. Yeah, I think we're up to 3/4, but it may or may not hit this point of the projection. If it does, I'll be pretty surprised, because this is pretty far. I think this is about, I would say 19 away. Nope, 17 away. Okay, interesting. But with this projector, once we put it on, it's going to project even further. And we're almost there. Almost there. We still got, if we're calculating the asteroid that we found cobalt on, that's about 69 kilometers away. So yeah, quote unquote, almost there. Still a long way to go, but I hope you guys are enjoying the time lapse, the context
And of course, if you did and do, like, subscribe, drop a comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.